these guys, and this is from my point of view, the first time that guys are exposed to sex is through pornography, and I don't think it's the best way for sure. It's perpetuating some sexual behaviors that are not really. So for you, what's the problem? Why do we have to go that way, and what would be the alternatives to that?
Well, I think there's, I mean, this is idealistic and utopic in a sense, but I think there's a huge benefit if we had much more open discussions and much more sexual learning, and just making it so you take the morality out of these different acts. And so we can have these discussions with our friends and with our family, and get guys and girls in the same room instead of in different rooms when we're having that sex ed talk, so that can be you can get used to the idea of talking together. And then just, yeah, I mean, the problem with not being able to talk about porn is that then you can't critically analyze porn. And I'd love to critically analyze porn with my friends, but they don't want to. I guess it'd be awkward.
And they're horrible too. Oh, sorry, that's just my own personal thing. They're really cheesy and why? But anyways.
I've never watched it, and my housemate was shocked. He was like, "How the fuck did you get through life not watching porn?" And I was just like, I don't know. There's so many good TV shows. I've never thought this through, so yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you guys think about that.
Let's try and get to a lot of people, I think. Yeah, let's just try and get as many people involved as possible. So,
yeah, so the question returns back to the one just before about traditionalism versus non-traditional. I quite agree that to place a false dichotomy there is quite right, and that to say that the non-traditional is automatically progressive somehow is completely wrong. I completely agree with you. But to say that the traditional is somehow a positive force, I think is quite a mistake too. The traditional, in the sense of patriarchal relationships, in the sense of heteronormative relationships, in the sense of white supremacist relationships, is always and is fundamentally oppressive, no matter where it comes from, because it exists in a wider context of institutions which support oppression. Now, sure, your father may have had the best intentions for you, trying to make you not play hockey, fair enough. But the fact that he prevented you from playing hockey, which fed into an institution where women across the entirety of North America have been prevented from playing hockey, presents us with a larger institution of the oppression of women. So we might say that perhaps your father was not being sexist intentionally, but by playing into the wider context of the oppression of women, we must say that he was playing into that institution.
He wasn't saying, though, you can't play hockey because you're a little woman. He was saying, you are so, small, and, I'm worried about my baby. This is my, and I think if he had a little boy who was, really small, he was even worried about my cousins who are boys, getting killed playing sports. So I think, yes, maybe, unintentionally, but I think you have to look at what those places are coming from. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and that was kind of what my point on it was, is that the normative judgments and normative ideas between good and bad, or positive, whichever, traditional and non-traditional, they're not what I consider to be relevant. It's kind of what you're talking about, is to consider how these ideas privilege different people and oppress different people in different scenarios, and I think that's what we need to be more cognizant of. It's yeah, you're right, traditional relationships fall within these broader intersecting systems of oppression, and it's important to challenge those and to dismantle those, and not to put a value judgment on either, to say which is better and which is worse. I think it's important in a conversation when we're talking about ideas of masculinity is to recognize where a statement like Kate's dad's comes from, and how that operates, and how we can work within a more progressive and kind of comprehensive way to challenge those ideas and where they're coming from, because he has a right to be afraid for his daughter to play in a physical sport. That's his daughter, he can have that, but we need to recognize where does the idea of the physical sport come, the access to those realms. That's the really, I think, important question that you're getting at, and I really appreciate that comment.
Alright, so I guess I'm taking kind of back to relationships and traditional relationships. Kind of when a guy is seen as wanting to get to know a girl or another guy, it's kind of oh, they want to get to know them, they want to date them, they want to sleep with them, and I don't think that's necessarily right. Like you could just want to like take someone out on a date to get to know them, and I think that the fact that people see it as wanting to sleep with them isn't fair, and it's with the traditional sexual scripts that when following that tradition, I mean, the end goal of dating someone is, as Rory mentioned earlier a little bit, like the end goal is sleeping with someone, but I don't think that in that sexual script, I don't think that's right, and I just want to hear, I guess, anyone's thoughts on that. Like, you can get to know people, and as a guy, you can want to get to know a girl without actually wanting to sleep with them. Like, taking someone out for dinner doesn't mean that you want to hook up with them at the end of the night. It just means you might want to get to know them.
Yeah, Adam loves getting to know people. You and your hand up there.
Yeah. I sure do. I just wanted to speak kind of piggyback off that and talk about the negative culture of even asking a girl on a date or a guy on a date nowadays. I feel like very much there's this perception that you don't do that anymore, and that it's more so maybe it's a university culture and not beyond that, but especially around here, it's very much a hookup culture, right? Where you go out and you hook up with a girl and you, or a guy, I apologize, I keep saying that, and you do nothing more than that, right? You don't need to know anything about her or him, and that's very much the goal, is to just hook up. And I noticed it myself because I myself asked the girl out a couple weeks ago, and it took me like a really long time to build that up to actually do it, because I really don't know why. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, why did it take so long? I just wanted to grab a cup of coffee, right? So, and I thought about it, and it's very much the negative perception around simply asking someone out nowadays. And I don't know if that really answered what Jack was saying, but I thought it might be relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, I think an interesting point on what Jack and Adam have been talking about. There's a lot of like interesting talks now going on about like girls and friend zoning, and kind of the demonization and the vilification of girls who friend zone guys. So it's almost like when a guy is like pursuing a girl and then he gets into the friend zone, that girl is a bitch for friend zoning him. Like there's like the pursuit of the girl, and then it's like as soon as you're friend zoned, it's like, well then why am I friends with you? Like I don't want to be friends with you, all I want is that. And I think that's like a really interesting kind of thing that we haven't really talked about, but your comment, your questions kind of evoked, is that there is this negative perception around just friend zones and the idea of like the only point of talking to a girl is so that you can sleep with her. And then once she friend zoned you, it's like, well, all right, done with that. Like it's like you were of no use to me anymore. And I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, I just on that like both of your points too is that on conversely as a girl too is that we have it's almost like this divide that exists where in university where we have a hookup culture as women, you know, conversations that I have, like, why is it taking him? I've been hooking up with him for so long. Why is it taking him so long to ask me out? And it's. I think we just need to recognize is that there is a divide that exists, and maybe communication is the only way that could awareness and communication is the only way that could sort of like lessen or break or other things. So.
So we're going to take just a okay, did you ever pick up for this? Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Did you want to add something on?
I just wanted to, I guess, sort of like piggyback what you were saying. Yeah, I think that you don't see like a lot of, I guess, date culture now because it's almost a vulnerability to put yourself out there. It's like I don't do it. I know I don't do it because I'm fucking terrified of getting rejected. And I hate it, but if I did, I'd probably like it a lot more. And if I got used to it, I'd build the confidence to be okay with it, I guess. But I think it speaks a lot to just like personal security or vulnerability.
Okay, so maybe one more and then we'll wrap it up. We haven't heard from you.
Okay, just really brief, I guess. I just want to speak to the earlier point on the kind of institutionalism aspect of this. I think it's really important because how I problematize these issues is that, well, actually the first thing I noticed is that you all provide a really nice, nuanced, unique perspective. Yet I notice links between all four of you. It's all about the power, you know. And so I think you cannot look at these questions of, well, if we talk about it, it feels like to me when we're talking about that directly, you're just looking at one tree in the larger forest. You have to look the entire force. And that speaks to, I know it sounds kind of cliche now, but it is patriarchy. I mean, power comes from that. And it's just manifested, from a macro sense to the culture and then to the individual. So I guess if we can just summarize it for now, I think I would offer to say, well, how do these things get perpetuated and facilitated? Think of it like a bubble. I definitely think pornography is a big culprit. Media in general is a big culprit. Prostitution's a big culprit. A whole bunch of these things. So you have to kind of think broad. You can't really be too specific, even though it's really helpful and it's really insightful. Especially with Jeff, I think it was, I didn't even know that about the top to bottom thing, but it makes sense. It's all about power, right? So overall, keeping a broad perspective is really helpful.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up because we're going to need to go into our next panel, but I just really want to thank everyone for their honesty and openness, and thanks our amazing panelists. And I'd really encourage you to keep the conversation going on Twitter, and our official hashtag I wrote on the board is MRRW2014. So just thank you so much.
We'll be here, so if you guys want to talk to us personally, just come right up.
So we're going to take a little break while we transition. What Justin said about vulnerability is